It takes authority to stand in the presence of God. And so one of the princes that had the privilege of standing in the presence of God decided to rebel. And when he rebelled, he came down with 1/3 of the angels. Those are the beings that are battling with you and I. And so when we talk about warfare, it's not a joke. You are dealing with a creature that was walked in the presence of God. He knows the elders, he knows the 4 beasts, he knows the archangels. He was himself an archangel, and because he was doing business in the presence, he knows that Elohim has no weakness. We have lived in his presence for aeons. There is no weakness with Elohim. And so when he was judged, there was nothing he could do. He hated God, he wanted to fight God, but there was no basis. You couldn't attack this being. I was in the presence with the elders, with the 4 beasts, with the archangel. God has no weakness. Until after many aeons, he now discovered God embarked on a project, and God said, let us make man in our own image, after our likeness. And the guy was watching. God has never created anything like himself. God has never created anything in his order. What is it that God wants with this man, this new creature? This one is not an elder, this one is not an archangel, this one is not a beast. What is it God wants to create? And when God announced it, he said, I want to create a being that bears my image. He said, God has decided to create something that can carry us into God. Before now, when we checked him, there was no weakness. If he wants to create something like him, then if we get that thing, we will get God. And true to his word, when he attacked man, the heart of God was broken, because for the first time the angels discovered that even God could have weakness, and the weakness of God was his love for man. And so when the man fell, God was pierced to the heart. God was frustrated. For the first time, the angels saw the weakness of God. In fact, the first time God cried was because of a man. He said Jesus wept. So God too can cry because of his affection for man, because of his love for man. The devil discovered this is God's weakness. If I deal with man, I deal with God. Those of you who are parents today, you know there are many people who cannot hurt you. They look for your children because they know that if they touch your children, they touch you. Because this one is not just something God created. This one is God himself extended. Because when God created man, the Bible said when he molded the dust, he breathed into the man. So what God called man is actually God in dust. God decided to put himself inside the vessel. So when you touch man, you touch God. When you hurt man, you hurt God. The devil discovered it, and so all of the arsenals of the devil was not against God. It was not against angels, it was against men. You are the one who thinks you are not important. And to prove that man was that important to God, when man fell, from that day God began to create a way of saving man. God himself left the throne and came into the garden. God killed an animal. Suddenly, God that only knows how to be worshipped, God became a worker. God came into the garden. God killed an animal and carried the cloth of the animal and covered the man, because he didn't want to kill the man. The Bible said, thou, O Lord, out of a purer eyes, your eyes cannot behold iniquity. If he sees the man in sin, he will kill him. And because he didn't want to kill him, he carried blood and covered him, so that when he look upon the blood, the innocence of the animal will atone the heart of God. The animal that was killed was innocent, so he needed to look at the blood of that innocent animal, because he can't kill the man. He loves the man. The man have become his weakness. And the devil said, now that I know, I will plunder you, God. Now that I know, I will break your heart, God. Now that I know, I will deal with you. And so when Jesus came, he told us the manifesto of the devil. In John chapter 10 verse 10, he said, the devil cometh not but for to kill, to steal, and to destroy. And so God's assignment was to create a way of saving the man. And there was no other way God could save the man except God himself becomes the victim. Because of the love God had for man, God decided to step down from his throne of glory. God decided to take off his garment of divinity, God decided to put upon himself the garment of man. God entered the womb of a woman, and God was there helplessly for 9 months. Whatever the woman ate, that was what God ate. Whatever the woman drank, that was what God drank. God stayed in the womb for 9 months. When God was born, Herod wanted to kill God. God was helpless. They had to carry God and run to Egypt to hide God, because God needed to become a man in order to save man. So God took a risk by removing his godhood and put upon himself manhood. So he suffered what men suffered. He was endangered by what men were endangered by. And the more the devil saw it, the more the devil was surprised. Can you love this man this much? I'm not talking politics. Our politicians will tell you they love us. It's a joke. The moment they enter the office, you can't even see them anymore. They're only driving jeeps and looting money. That's not what we are talking about. Why politicians use us to get to power? God left power to help us. That's what I'm talking about. God became vulnerable in order to save man, and the devil couldn't comprehend it. The devil now thought that I can deal with man. So now that God has become man, let me kill God so there's no God anymore. But he didn't know there was a superior wisdom at work, because he said if the princes of this world had known, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Because the way God will save man is by God dying in the place of man, is by God going to hell in the place of man. But while God is in hell, then God can rise from the dead, because he created all things. And so God was creating a basis to give man an advantage because of his love. And so although his love for man was his weakness, his love for man became the basis for the demonstration of his power. And so when the devil thought he had defeated God by killing his son, God showcased the greatest power by rising from the dead. And when God rose from the dead, the Bible said he became the first begotten of the dead, so that the new man that will be created, even death can no longer hurt him. So that the new man that will be created, the devil can no longer hurt him. So the basis behind covenant transaction is to come to that point where the devil can no longer hurt you, and in not hurting you, he's no longer hurting God.